It all started on a humid Saturday afternoon, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and tempers run short. I just finished installing a new basketball hoop in our driveway for my son, Liam. He'd been begging for one since Christmas, and I finally had a weekend free to surprise him. I'm Brandon Voss, by the way. I work maintenance for a small logistics company, nothing fancy, but enough to keep my roof solid and my kid happy. We live in a quiet cul-de-sac in a neighborhood run by the dreaded Hawthorne Ridge HOA. And sitting high on her porcelain throne as the HOA president was none other than Patricia Oakley. Now, Patricia was your classic over-the-top HOA tyrant. Late 50s, bleach blonde bob, always had a clipboard in one hand and judgment in the other. She lived 2 houses down and somehow managed to make everyone feel like they were trespassing on their own property. You couldn't sneeze without her filing a noise complaint. So when Liam came running out with his basketball, face lit up like it was Christmas morning all over again, I didn't even think twice. He started shooting hoops, laughing, missing, trying again. Just a dad watching his kid be a kid. That's when the screeching started. "Excuse me," I turned, and there she was, Patricia, marching down the sidewalk in her floral blouse and beige caprice like she owned the whole damn county. "That is not HOA compliant," she barked, pointing at the hoop like it had personally insulted her mother. "It's portable, on my driveway." "It's not even facing the street," I said, shielding my eyes from the sun as I looked at her. "I don't care. Page 12, Section 4 of the Hawthorne Ridge Covenant, no recreational equipment in view from the street. That includes basketball hoops." I took a breath. "It's Saturday." "He's just playing. I'll roll it in when we're done." Patricia's lips curled into that tight, pissed-off smile she always wore. "You'll roll it in right now or I'll fine you." Liam stopped playing and looked between us nervously, clutching the ball. I stepped forward. "You're not fining me over this. He's playing for the first time. Give us an hour." She huffed and stormed off, muttering about entitled renters even though I've owned this house for 12 years. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Next day, I'm at work 12-hour shift trying to keep forklifts running, and I get a call from my next-door neighbor, Todd. "She just slapped your kid." I froze. "What?" "She walked right up your driveway and slapped Liam. He was just bouncing the ball." I saw the whole thing, man. I nearly dropped my wrench. I was home in 20 minutes flat. Liam was sitting on the porch, red-faced and shaken. I knelt down. "What happened?" She came up yelling again, said I was violating rules. I told her you said it was okay. She grabbed the ball and threw it into the street. I tried to get it, and she slapped me. I felt something boil under my skin. "My kid's 10. I looked him in the eye. "You're okay," he nodded, but he didn't look okay. He looked like he'd just learned the world wasn't safe. I called the cops. Officer Daniels showed up within 10 minutes. I gave him the story, and so did Todd, who even had security camera footage from his doorbell cam. Clear shot of Patricia marching onto my driveway, grabbing the ball and slapping Liam right across the face. Daniels looked pissed. "She put her hands on your kid," he said. "That's assault on a minor. We can charge her." "Do it," I said. "I want her held accountable." As if summoned by drama, Patricia came marching down the sidewalk again, this time with her infamous clipboard, her face twisted into that holier-than-thou scowl. "What are the police doing here?" she demanded. Daniels calmly turned to her. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. You're on private HOA property. I am the president of this neighborhood." He raised a brow. "You assaulted a child. That overrides your little covenants." Her jaw dropped. "I did no such thing. That child was being disrespectful and disobedient to the rules of this community." "Ma'am, we have video evidence. You're being charged with battery." Her face drained of color. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." Daniels didn't flinch. "And now you're under arrest." He read her rights right there on the sidewalk while half the block watched from porches and windows. Liam stood beside me, eyes wide as Patricia was handcuffed and led to the squad car. Neighbors whispered. Some even clapped. As the car pulled away, Todd leaned over and said, "Bet she didn't see that one coming." I didn't even nod. I was still too busy watching Liam, who looked like he was trying to process what just happened. I put a hand on his shoulder. "She's not gonna touch you again, I promise." And I meant it. By Monday morning, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Patricia Oakley's arrest had spread faster than wildfire in a dry forest. People who hadn't spoken to each other in years were suddenly lingering by mailboxes, swapping stories. Some were shocked, others not so much. But everyone agreed. The Queen of Hawthorne Ridge had just been dethroned. That afternoon, a white Ford sedan rolled into my driveway, a plain city vehicle with a small decal on the door reading County Mediation and Residential Affairs. A tall man in a navy polo stepped out, clipboard in hand, walking with purpose. I met him halfway down the driveway. "Mr. Voss?" he asked, adjusting his sunglasses. "That's me. What's this about?" "I'm David Lennox with the county's HOA Grievance Task Force. We've received several complaints about the Hawthorne Ridge HOA's leadership. I'd like to ask you a few questions." I motioned toward the porch. "Sure. Let's sit." He followed me up the steps, took a seat across from me, and flipped open his file. "I'm here because we've received 5 formal grievances in the last 6 months about retaliatory fines, selective enforcement, and now, obviously, criminal conduct involving the HOA president. Your name came up on 2 of them, this latest incident and another referencing a zoning harassment complaint from last fall." I blinked. "Wait, someone filed that," he nodded. "Neighbor of yours, Todd Green. He cited your situation as part of a pattern." "I didn't even know that was something I could report." Lennox scribbled a note. "Most people don't. That's why I'm here." He spent the next 20 minutes asking about Patricia's behavior, her interactions with residents, and any documentation we had. I pulled out the small accordion folder where I kept receipts and HOA notices. I hadn't realized how many I'd saved until I started thumbing through them. Fines for improper trash bin placement, for non-neutral curtain color, even a warning because Liam had chalk drawings on the sidewalk one summer. I hadn't paid half of them. Lennox flipped through them. "These are borderline predatory. The codes are vague by design, but when it's targeted at specific residents and enforced inconsistently, we can recommend dissolution or restructuring." "She made it miserable to live here," I said. "She thought this place was her personal kingdom." He stood up. "I've got what I need. There's a hearing scheduled with the County HOA Review Board next week. It's not public, but residents can submit statements. You might want to talk with your neighbors." I thanked him and watched him drive away. For the first time in a long while, it felt like someone was actually listening. That night, I knocked on doors, not with a petition or some big speech, just a conversation. I started with Todd, then crossed the street to the Youngs, then the Morrisons. Word spread quickly. People invited me in, offered coffee, shared their own stories. Mrs. Young told me about the time Patricia tried to block her from repainting her shutters, insisting the approved color palette was under review. Mr. Morrison had been fined $300 for excessive lawn ornamentation after his wife put out 3 solar gnomes. Everyone had a story. By Thursday, I had 15 signed statements and a pile of digital evidence. Todd had even dug up a recording from last year's HOA board Zoom meeting. Patricia could be heard yelling at another board member, threatening to revoke his privileges if he didn't vote her way. That recording was gold. Friday morning, I got a knock on my door. This time, it was someone I hadn't seen before. Mid-30s, sharp blazer, clipboard. "Good morning, Mr. Voss. I'm Claire Latham, interim legal counsel for the Hawthorne Ridge HOA. May I come in?" I crossed my arms. "What's this about?" "I'm here to discuss the upcoming emergency board vote. Patricia Oakley is officially suspended pending the outcome of her criminal case, and the board is appointing a temporary president. Your name has been submitted for consideration." I stared at her. "You're joking." "I'm not. Several residents nominated you. And under the bylaws, any homeowner in good standing can be appointed interim president if the current board is disbanded." "Why would I want to run the HOA?" Frankly, no one else wants to clean up this mess. The place needs someone who won't abuse the power. I didn't answer right away. My gut said no, I had enough on my plate. But then I thought about Liam, about all the neighbors who'd been strong-armed into submission, about how Patricia had made people feel like guests in their own homes. "I'll go to the meeting," I said. "I won't promise anything else." The emergency meeting took place Saturday morning in the community rec center. I hadn't stepped foot in that place since the HOA banned open gym hours 3 years ago. Now it was packed. People stood against the walls, lined up in the hallway. No one was there for cookies and mingling. They were there to see what would happen next. Claire stood at the front, clipboard in hand, speaking through a mic. "Due to the suspension of Patricia Oakley and the resignation of 2 board members, we are invoking Emergency Clause 17. We will appoint an interim board today. Residents may nominate candidates now." Voices rose. A woman near the back called out, "I nominate Brandon Voss." Someone else shouted, "Seconded." Claire looked at me. "Do you accept nomination?" I stepped forward. "I do. But if I'm doing this, I'm doing it to fix things. No more fake fines, no more intimidation. This HOA works for the residents, not the other way around." Applause erupted. Loud, genuine. I hadn't expected that. The vote wasn't even close. By noon, I was sitting at the head of a battered folding table, flanked by 2 new board members, Todd and Mrs. Young. We had a lot to fix. The first thing we did was freeze all pending fines. Then we opened an audit on the HOA's finances. That's when things got interesting. Turns out Patricia had been paying a landscaping company owned by her nephew nearly triple the fair rate. Thousands in overcharges, all pushed through under budget discretion. And that wasn't all. There were reimbursements for community consulting that led to a P.O. box in another state. We flagged it all and called the county auditor's office. Monday morning, detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit showed up with a warrant. They seized boxes of files from the HOA storage closet and took statements from everyone on the new board. 2 hours later, the news broke Patricia Oakley was being investigated for financial fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of HOA funds. The county was pressing additional charges. I came home that evening to find Liam on the porch, spinning the basketball on his finger. He looked up with a grin. "You're famous now. Everyone's talking about you at school. Good or bad?" I asked. "Mostly good. Some kids think you're like a mayor or something." I laughed. "Well, I'm definitely not that." He shot the ball. It bounced twice and dropped through the net. "You know," he said, retrieving it, "I think the hoop's part of what started all this." "Yeah," I said, watching the sun dip low over the rooftops. "Funny how something small can tear open something big." But it wasn't funny, really. It was justice. And justice, once it starts rolling, doesn't stop for anyone. By Tuesday, I had to start turning off my phone during work. Local reporters kept calling, neighbors were texting updates, and complete strangers were emailing suggestions for what the new HOA board should implement. Somehow, I'd become the face of a neighborhood rebellion, and it wasn't just Hawthorne Ridge paying attention anymore. But I had bigger things on my plate than publicity. Mrs. Young found something that morning. She showed up at my porch just after sunrise, holding a thick yellow envelope and looking like she hadn't slept. "I was going through my old HOA receipts," she said, breath catching. "I kept them all, every letter, every payment notice." I compared them to my bank records. I took the envelope and flipped through the contents, photocopies of checks, screenshots of bank statements, and side-by-side comparisons of HOA billing letters. She charged us twice for the same monthly dues. Look here, January. I paid by check, cashed on the 5th. Then there's a digital withdrawal on the 22nd, labeled HOA reprocessing fee, same amount, and it happened again in March and June. I narrowed my eyes. How long's this been happening? Far as I can tell. 2 years. I stared at the page, my stomach tightening. She leaned in. I talked to the Petersons. They had the same thing. They thought it was some new online payment system they missed, but now I think she was double billing people quietly. The ones who didn't notice just kept paying. I closed the folder and nodded. This isn't just shady, it's straight-up theft. That afternoon, I called Detective Herrera, the lead on Patricia's financial investigation. You're going to want to see something, I told him. By Thursday, Herrera had subpoenaed the HOA's accounts. What he found cracked things wide open. Patricia had created a shadow ledger. A second account under the HOA's name, but registered through a separate routing number. Funds from duplicate charges were siphoned there tens of thousands of dollars over the course of 3 years. She'd labeled it Operations Overflow. But nothing about it was operational. The funds were used for personal travel, spa treatments, furniture, and what looked like a private renovation on a property that wasn't even in Hawthorne Ridge. The detective's tone turned hard. This is no longer just a misuse of funds. We're looking at fraud, wire theft, and possibly money laundering. He asked if I could gather statements from affected residents. I already had names from the night I went door to door. I called each one again, explained what we'd found. Most were furious. A few broke down crying. One couple, the Mays, had defaulted on a property tax payment last year because of overdrafts caused by those duplicate charges. Their bank never reversed the fees. They thought it was their own budgeting mistake. That night, I sat down with the new board, Todd, Mrs. Young, and a quiet, sharply dressed woman named Marisol, who was elected last minute when the HOA bylaws required 4 members. I say we go public, Todd said, tapping the table. This isn't just neighbors getting pushed around. This is serious. We can't announce anything until Herrera gives the green light, Marisol countered. If she's laundering money, we don't want her to know we're onto her. The county's building a case. Mrs. Young nodded. Let the police handle the criminal part. We focus on the cleanup. Cleanup, as it turned out, was a mess of its own. We discovered a storage unit Patricia had rented under the HOA's name without board approval. The lease agreement was buried in an invoice disguised as a community security annex. We only noticed it when Marisol caught the unusual wording in the monthly budget report. When Herrera got a warrant and opened it, we found more than old documents. Lining the back wall were boxes of surveillance footage. Hidden camera feeds from public areas of the neighborhood entrance gates, the rec center, the pool. But some feeds weren't public. There were angles looking into private yards, one aimed directly at the Young's back deck. Herrera's face darkened when he saw it. This violates state surveillance law. If she installed these without consent, that's another felony. How the hell did she even set this up? I asked. He pointed to a label on one of the DVR boxes. This system's commercial grade. Someone helped her. Maybe whoever she hired for IT services. It didn't take long to trace the installer, a small tech company in the next county over. The owner told detectives he was paid in cash, under the table, and explicitly instructed not to mention the installation to the rest of the HOA board. He said she told him it was for internal security, Herrera told me later. But the minute he saw the footage locations, he got uncomfortable. He's giving us everything. By the following Thursday, the county issued a second warrant, this time for Patricia's personal residence. They found flash drives, dozens, labeled by address. Each drive held clips, edited segments of residents in their backyards, at their windows, even children playing. It was like she'd been building a dossier on the entire neighborhood. Herrera held a press conference that night. Calm, firm, no theatrics. He confirmed Patricia Oakley was being charged with felony fraud, illegal surveillance, wire theft, and child endangerment. The last charge came from the slap because Liam was a minor and the incident was captured on camera. Prosecutors had upgraded it. She was also under investigation for conspiracy, pending interviews with anyone who might have helped her hide what she'd done. The neighborhood was stunned, but also strangely relieved. Like the weight of paranoia had finally been named and lifted. The next morning, I found a note taped to my front door. It wasn't threatening, just a short, handwritten apology from one of the old board members, Harold Dunn. I had no idea, he wrote. She said the financial stuff was above my clearance level. I didn't want to cause trouble. I was wrong. Tell your boy I'm sorry. I brought it inside and left it folded on the kitchen counter. I didn't know what to make of it. Maybe he was just scared. Maybe he really didn't know. But it didn't change what had happened. That weekend, we held the first open HOA meeting in the neighborhood's history. No closed doors. No executive privilege. Just folding chairs in the rec center and a microphone passed around. People showed up, more than 50, including families who hadn't participated in years. Todd ran the slideshow. Mrs. Young presented the new transparency budget. Marisol explained how we'd be transitioning to a third-party financial auditor, one with no connection to any resident. I stood last. I know this has been a rough few weeks, I said, scanning the crowd. A lot of us feel like we've been living under someone else's thumb. That ends now. We're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be real, and everything we do, you'll see it. No more secrets. Someone called out, "What about the fines we already paid?" "We're working with the county to establish a restitution fund," I replied. "If you were charged unfairly or double-billed, we'll get your money back. It'll take time, but it's coming." There was no applause, just quiet agreement, nods, a collective breath. Afterward, people lingered. No one rushed out. Kids played outside the rec center, neighbors swapped stories, someone brought lemonade, Liam found me by the side door. "Can I keep the hoop up now?" he asked. I laughed. "You could install a scoreboard, you're good." He bounced the ball once and paused. "She really watched all those people?" "Yeah," I said. "Guess some people care more about control than community." He nodded and shot the ball into the air. It hit the rim, bounced, and dropped through. "Glad it's over," he said. I was too, but I also knew it wasn't really over. We'd have cleanup for months, maybe longer. Legal headaches, policy rewrites, rebuilding trust. Still, something had changed. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were a community. A week after the open meeting, I sat at the folding table in the rec center again, this time staring at a spreadsheet projected onto the wall. Marisol had her laptop open, her fingers flying as she cross-referenced the newly subpoenaed HOA bank records with residents' complaints. Todd leaned back in his chair, biting the end of a pen, and Mrs. Young was flipping through a copy of the HOA charter with a yellow highlighter. "This one here," Marisol said, pointing at a line item labeled Community Events Consultant $3,500, was paid to a company that doesn't exist. I looked it up. It's a dissolved LLC with no online presence and no business license renewal for 5 years. "That's the third shell company," I said. "How many more are we going to find?" Mrs. Young tilted her glasses. "There's a pattern. The same names pop up on the invoices: J. Oakley, L. Morrison, K. Fallow, all listed as independent contractors. Any relation to Patricia? J. Oakley is her brother, L. Morrison is a cousin, K. Fallow, that's her maiden name." Marisol's voice sharpened. She was laundering money through fake services and filtering it to family members. Todd stood up. "How the hell did no one catch this before?" I looked around the room. "Because she never let anyone see the books. We were all too used to thinking the HOA handled itself. We didn't ask questions until it was too late." Marisol clicked a few keys. "I'm compiling a package for the DA's office. They've already opened a secondary fraud investigation. This pushes it into racketeering territory." "RICO," Todd blinked. "You're saying we're dealing with organized fraud?" "Exactly that. She wasn't just abusing power, she built a criminal structure under the guise of community management." I leaned on the table, absorbing the weight of it all. "We need to go door to door again, not for signatures this time. For impact statements. The DA's office wants as much context as possible to show the human cost." Mrs. Young nodded. "I'll start with the southeast block. That's where the most complaints came from." Todd grabbed a notepad. "I'll take the duplexes." "I'll handle the cul-de-sac," I said. "People there have been quiet, but I think they've got stories." We split up that evening. I walked the loop past the mailboxes and the trimmed hedges, knocking gently and introducing myself not as the HOA president, but as a neighbor trying to help right a wrong. The first door I knocked on belonged to an older man I'd only ever seen on morning walks. He opened it cautiously but gave a tired smile when he saw me. "I'm not looking for votes," I said quickly. "I'm here to ask if you ever had issues with the HOA in the last few years that you never brought up." He nodded slowly and invited me in. Inside, he shuffled to a cabinet and pulled out a folder so thick the spine was bulging. Inside were copies of every letter the HOA had ever sent him, over 200 pages. "I stopped fighting them after my wife passed," he said. "But before that, Patricia fined us for having a wind chime on the front porch. Said it violated the noise tranquility section, then she threatened to put a lien on the house when I refused to pay." He handed me a letter with her signature at the bottom. The handwriting was sharp, etched in black ink like a contract. The fine was for $175. The wind chime, he told me, had belonged to his late wife's sister. She used it to help with her dementia. Familiar sounds calmed her down. Patricia didn't care. I took careful notes and promised to include his story. He nodded but didn't speak again. Over the next few days, we collected over 70 statements. Some were short, notices about weeds, threatened liens, unexplained dues hikes. Others were worse. One woman had been served with a cease and desist for running a small daycare out of her home, something the HOA had previously approved in writing only for Patricia to revoke it after a disagreement over a landscaping violation. That woman lost her license and her income. By the time we handed the statements to the DA's office, they filled 2 full binders. Then the court date came. It wasn't some dramatic, high-profile trial. It was a preliminary hearing, just enough to determine whether the charges would move forward to a full case, but the courtroom was packed. Neighbors filled the back rows, sitting shoulder to shoulder. The Mays were there, so was Mrs. Young, and even the quiet couple from the corner lot who never left their shutters open. Patricia sat at the defense table, wearing a gray suit and a face like stone. No clipboard. No power. Just a woman stripped of the illusion of control. The prosecutor presented the documents Marisol had compiled: bank transfers, overlapping invoices, surveillance logs, and the shell company data. Then came the statements. One by one, victims were called to the stand. Some cried, some were angry. All of them told the same story. An HOA that had become a weapon, wielded by one woman for her own gain. The judge listened without interrupting. When the prosecutor finished, Patricia's lawyer stood and made a weak argument about procedural misunderstandings and a lack of malicious intent. The judge didn't buy it. "I find sufficient cause to move all charges forward," he said, including the newly submitted charges of wire fraud and illegal surveillance. "Bail will be set at $100,000. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Patricia didn't react. She just stared forward like she hadn't registered the weight of it yet. As the hearing ended, people filed out in silence. No one cheered. No one clapped. Outside, I stood beside Todd and Mrs. Young under the shade of a sycamore tree. The heat was heavy, but the air felt different, lighter somehow. "She's going to prison," Todd said, not as a question. Marisol joined us a moment later. "If the DA follows through on all charges, she could be facing over 20 years. Mrs. Young exhaled slowly. "And what happens to the HOA now?" "We rebuild," I said. "We rewrite the rules, we make everything transparent. And we never let power concentrate like that again." That evening, I called a community meeting, not just for board members, but for everyone. We gathered at the rec center one last time, folding chairs arranged in a circle instead of rows. No podium, no table, just neighbors sitting together. We voted to establish term limits for the board. We voted to require all financial decisions be made with community oversight. We agreed to hire a neutral management company to handle dues and maintenance. And we created a rotating resident review council, 10 homeowners chosen by lottery each year to audit HOA activities. No one argued. Not once. After the meeting, Liam ran up to me, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "They're doing a project at school about civic responsibility," he said. Can I talk about what happened here? I looked around as people folded chairs, laughed, hugged, and walked home together. You absolutely can, I said. That night, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I sat on the porch with a cold drink and watched Liam shoot hoops under the porch light. The net swayed with every bounce steady and calm. Across the street, a new family was moving in. No clipboard greeted them. No threats. Just Mrs. Young walking over with a welcome basket and a warm smile. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it belonged to its people again. And that was more than enough.